Signing my scholarship was supposed to be the biggest day of my life. My parents said they wouldn't miss it. They did. That afternoon, my mom posted pictures at my sister's nail appointment. My teacher saw my face, sat next to me and said, "Do you have anywhere else to go?" My name is Delphine. And no, that's not a name you hear every day. Trust me, I know. Kids made sure to remind me of that all through middle school. But the name thing, that was the least of my problems growing up. Let me ask you something right now before I even get into this. Have you ever had a moment, the one you've been working toward for years, and the people who were supposed to show up just didn't? Not because of an accident, not because of an emergency, but because of a nail appointment. I'll let that land for a second. I was 17, a junior at Roosevelt High in Columbus, Ohio, and I had just been awarded the Meridian Academic Excellence Scholarship. Full ride, 4 years to Ohio State. 1,500 students applied. I was one of 4 selected. You have to understand what this meant for me. I come from a family where college was always talked about like some far-off dream that other people got to have. My dad, Ronald, worked logistics at a distribution warehouse. My mom, Patricia, did bookkeeping part-time from home. Money was always tight, not dramatic, not poverty, but the kind of tight where you felt it in small ways every single day. Store brand everything. Shoes held together a semester too long. Vacations that were just drives to my aunt's place 2 hours away. So when I got that scholarship letter, when I actually read those words, I sat on my bedroom floor and cried for 20 minutes straight. Happy crying. The kind you can't control. Called my mom first. He screamed. And I mean screamed. "Ronald! Ronald, get in here. Delphine did it. She got the scholarship." I could hear my dad whooping in the background. My little sister Brianna, who was 14 at the time, started jumping on the couch. I could literally hear the springs. It was one of those rare, pure family moments. Everybody happy. Everybody together. Everybody proud. The signing ceremony was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon, 3rd week of March. It was held in the school's main auditorium. Parents were not just invited, they were personally notified by the school administration. Principal Hawthorne sent home a printed letter. My mom's email got a calendar invite. There were reminder calls the week before. The school did everything but show up to their bedroom with a trumpet. My parents said, and I want you to really hear this, they said, "We would not miss this for the world." My dad said it twice. "Do you want to guess where this is going? Because even if you do, I promise you it's worse than you're imagining." The morning of the ceremony, everything seemed fine. My mom ironed my blouse, the white one I saved for important things. My dad made pancakes, which he only did on special occasions. Brianna kept saying, "You're gonna look so good up there, Delaware." Felt like a real family morning. The kind you want to hold on to. I went to school. Got through my classes. By 2 o'clock I was backstage in the auditorium with the other 3 scholarship recipients. Marcus, Tanya, and a quiet kid named Eli who looked like he might pass out from nerves. We could hear the audience filing in. Parents, teachers, district administrators. Kept looking at the door. 3 other sets of parents walked in. I recognized them. Marcus's mom was wearing a blazer. Tanya's parents sat in the front row with flowers. Actual flowers they brought to a high school ceremony. My row was empty. Principal Hawthorne came backstage at 2:15 to tell us we were starting in 10 minutes. Check my phone. Nothing. I texted my mom. "It starts soon, are you almost here?" No response. I texted my dad. "Dad? You coming?" Nothing. I told myself there was traffic. There had to be traffic. Or maybe they parked far. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe the car had a flat tire and their phones both died simultaneously, which is physically improbable, but I was 17 and I needed an explanation that wasn't what I was starting to suspect. The ceremony started. I walked out onto that stage. I sat in my chair. I smiled. Because what else do you do when 100 people are looking at you? I smiled and I scanned that auditorium one more time, and the row where I'd told my parents to sit was still empty. My teacher, Ms. Caldwell, she was the one who'd nominated me for the scholarship in the first place. She was sitting in the faculty section to the left of the stage. I caught her eye, and she gave me this look. Not pity exactly. More like awareness. Like she saw what was happening, and she was quietly furious on my behalf. Got called up. I shook Principal Hawthorne's hand. I signed the papers. Someone took a photo. I smiled so hard my face hurt. And somewhere across town, my mother was getting a gel manicure. I didn't know that yet. But I was about to find out in the most humiliating way possible. And what came next? Honestly, I don't even know if I'm ready to tell you what came next. But I will. 'Cause it gets worse before it gets better. And then it gets interesting. Stay with me. The ceremony ended around 3:30. I walked off that stage holding a folder of signed documents, a certificate in a plastic sleeve, and a smile that had basically fossilized on my face. Ms. Caldwell found me before I even reached the hallway. She didn't do the whole performative teacher thing. She just walked up, looked at me directly, and said quietly, "Do you have anywhere else to go right now?" That question hit me harder than I expected. 'Cause it was honest. It acknowledged, without making a big deal of it, that something had gone wrong today. I told her I was fine. Obviously. Because I was 17 and "I'm fine" is basically a survival reflex. She said, "I'm taking you to get some food. You can say no." My stomach literally growled in response. She raised one eyebrow. "I'll get my keys." So there I was, sitting in a diner booth 3 blocks from school, eating a grilled cheese across from my English teacher, still clutching my scholarship certificate because I didn't know where else to put it. Very dignified moment in my life. She asked if I wanted to talk about it. I said not really. She said okay. And somehow that was exactly right. Then my phone buzzed. "Brianna, Mom and Dad are home asking where you are." They were already home, asking where I went. I stared at that text for a long moment, then, for reasons I still can't fully explain, I opened Instagram. My mom's profile. Posted at 2:47 p.m. During the ceremony. 3 photos. Her and Brianna at Bliss Studio Nail Salon. Brianna showing off a coral manicure, my mom with a fresh French tip. Both of them grinning. Caption: "Girls' afternoon with my baby nail polish sparkles, she deserved a treat." 47 likes. I turned the phone around and showed Ms. Caldwell without saying a word. She looked at it, set her coffee cup down very carefully, then said, "I'm sorry, Delphine." No advice. No excuses made for them. Just "I'm sorry." Somehow that was exactly what I needed. Now here's where I want to ask you something. When I got home that evening, do you think I confronted them? I didn't. My mom looked up from the couch. "Oh, there you are. How'd it go? Did you get applause?" My dad half turned from the TV. "There's the scholar." Like everything was completely normal. Like they'd been there. I said, "It was fine," and went to my room. No. I already know what you're thinking. But here's the thing. When your family has spent years treating you like the one who handles things, you start doing it to yourself. Brianna was the baby. Brianna was sensitive. Brianna got treats. I was Delphine. Delphine is fine. What I didn't know was that while I was in the diner bathroom, Miss Caldwell had made a phone call. She'd gone through my emergency contact forms and called my grandmother. My dad's mother, Grandma Opal. Grandma Opal was 71, 5'2", lived 40 minutes outside Columbus, and was absolutely not the kind of woman you delivered bad news to unless you were ready for consequences. She knew what happened. My parents had no idea she knew. And trust me, Grandma Opal was not going to stay quiet about it. Grandma Opal showed up on a Saturday. No warning call. No text. She just pulled into our driveway at 10 in the morning in her old burgundy Buick, stepped out in her good church coat, which if you knew her meant she was serious, and knocked on the front door like she was collecting a debt. I was upstairs when I heard her voice. And I froze. My dad opened the door and said, "Mama? What are you?" She walked straight past him. I crept to the top of the stairs and just listened. She sat down at the kitchen table, folded her hands, and looked at my parents with a kind of calm that is somehow scarier than yelling. She said, "I want somebody in this house to explain to me why I had to hear about my granddaughter's scholarship ceremony from her teacher." Complete silence. My mom started with, "Opal, it was a miscommunication." "Patricia." Grandma Opal said her name like a full stop. "I saw the Instagram post. My neighbor Louise showed me. So let's not do that. I will be honest with you. Part of me wanted to run downstairs and hug her. The other part was mortified that any of this was happening at all. Do you know that specific embarrassment of having someone fight a battle for you that you didn't ask them to fight, but also desperately needed them to fight? That was me, sitting on the top stair in my socks. My dad tried next. He said they'd lost track of time and thought the ceremony was later. which was such a weak excuse I actually winced from upstairs. Grandma Opal looked at him and said, "Ronald, baby, that is the sorriest thing I've ever heard come out of your mouth. And I was there when you were 6 and told me the dog ate your report card." We didn't have a dog. I had to physically cover my mouth. But here's where it shifted from satisfying to uncomfortable, because Grandma Opal then said something that wasn't just aimed at my parents. She said, "And where is Delphine right now? Is she up those stairs listening? Delphine, come down here please. So much for being invisible." I came downstairs in my pajamas, hair not done, dignity fully gone. My mom looked embarrassed. My dad looked at the floor. Brianna had apparently sensed danger and disappeared into her bedroom like a small animal detecting a storm. Grandma Opal looked at me and said, "Did you tell your parents how this made you feel?" I said, "No ma'am." She said, "Why not?" And I just stood there. Because the honest answer was, because I didn't think it would matter. Because I had spent so long being the low-maintenance daughter that I genuinely wasn't sure my feelings would register as important. I didn't say all that. But I think she heard it anyway. She turned back to my parents and said, "You have a daughter who didn't even feel safe enough to tell you she was hurting. You want to think about that." The kitchen was very quiet after that. My mom cried. And look, I want to be fair here because I know some of you are probably thinking, too little too late. And honestly, part of me agreed. But she cried in a way that didn't feel performed. She kept saying she didn't realize, that she'd thought Brianna needed the time with her, that she assumed the ceremony was just a formality. Just a formality. I want you to sit with that phrase for a second. My scholarship signing. Formality. My dad didn't cry, but he went very still in the way he did when something genuinely reached him. He looked at me and said, "Delaware. Sorry. That's all I've got right now, but I mean it." It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was something. What nobody knew, not my parents, not Grandma Opal, was that I had already decided I wasn't going to just accept an apology and move on. I'd been the forgiving, easygoing, handles everything daughter for 17 years. Had a plan. Nothing dramatic. Nothing cruel. But I was going to make them understand what they missed. Really understand it. And I knew exactly how to do it. Here's the thing about being the quiet, responsible daughter for 17 years. People underestimate you. They assume that because you don't make scenes, you don't have moves. Had moves. The scholarship committee had arranged a small reception 2 weeks after the signing. A follow-up event. Dinner with the 4 recipients, their families, the committee members, and a few Ohio State faculty. Formal invitations, nice venue, the whole thing. It was essentially a second chance for parents to show up and celebrate. My parents assumed they were coming. I hadn't said otherwise. I just hadn't confirmed it either. Instead, I called Grandma Opal. I asked her if she would come as my guest. She said, and I quote, "I already bought a dress. I don't know when she bought it. I choose not to question it." I also invited Ms. Caldwell, because the invitation allowed for 2 guests and she had earned it more than anyone. I told my parents about the event, casually a few days before, but mentioned that the guest list was already finalized through the school, which was technically not a lie. I had finalized it, through my own choices. Was that a little calculated? Absolutely. Do I regret it? I'll let you decide. The evening was genuinely beautiful. Round tables, real tablecloths, the kind of event where they put little name cards out. Grandma Opal showed up in a deep green dress looking like she owned the building. Ms. Caldwell wore a blazer and brought me flowers, which made me feel incredibly awkward and also completely seen. The committee chair, a woman named Dr. Fontaine, gave a short speech about each recipient. When she got to me, she talked about my essay. I'd written about being the first in my family to pursue a 4-year university, about what education meant when resources were limited. Dr. Fontaine said it was the essay that made the committee's decision unanimous. Grandma Opal reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. Ms. Caldwell was quietly wiping her eye and pretending she wasn't. I was holding it together. Barely. But here's the part one didn't expect. Marcus, one of the other recipients, funny kid, basketball player, not someone I knew well before this, leaned over during dinner and said, "Your grandma is the coolest person in this room, including Dr. Fontaine. Don't tell Dr. Fontaine." I laughed for the first time in what felt like weeks. It was such a small thing. But sometimes small things are exactly what you need. Meanwhile, at home, my parents had figured out what happened. Brianna, bless her heart, has never in her life successfully kept information to herself for more than 48 hours. She told my mom that I'd invited Grandma Opal. My mom called me that evening after the reception. The conversation was short. She asked why I hadn't told them the truth about the guest list. I said very calmly, "Mom, I wanted people there who I knew wouldn't miss it." Silence. Then she said, "That's fair." Just that. That's fair. I honestly didn't know what to do with that response. I was prepared for defensiveness, for guilt-tripping, for the classic pivot where somehow my feelings became an attack on hers. Instead, I got two words that carried more weight than a long apology. My dad called an hour later. He asked if the dinner was nice. I described it. The venue, Dr. Fontaine's speech, what she said about my essay. He listened to the whole thing without interrupting. Then he said, "I should have been there for the first one, Delaware. I should have been there. No excuses this time. I'm not going to pretend that 2 phone calls fixed everything. They didn't. There was still a lot of complicated feelings sitting in that house. My relationship with Brianna was weird for a while. Not her fault she was 14, but she'd become this symbol of everything that got prioritized over me, whether she meant to be or not. And my mom and I had a longer road ahead than one honest phone call. But something had shifted. You could feel it. What came next was the part one didn't plan for. The part where my family started actually trying. Not perfectly. Not without setbacks. But genuinely trying. And what my dad did the following month. I really didn't see that coming. My dad is not a demonstrative man. He doesn't do grand gestures. He communicates through actions so small you almost miss them. Fixing something in your room without being asked, leaving your favorite snack on the counter before a hard day. That's just Ronald. Always has been. So when he asked me one evening if I'd show him Ohio State's campus, I almost didn't register what he was actually asking. He said, "I've never been. Thought maybe you could show me around. Before you leave in the fall. Just the two of us." I said yes before I fully processed it. We went on a Tuesday. He took the day off work, which, if you know anything about Ronald and his attendance record, is basically the equivalent of someone else canceling a European vacation. We drove the 40 minutes mostly in comfortable quiet, which is honestly our best mode of communication. Walking around campus, something loosened between us. He asked real questions, about my intended major, about the dormitories, about whether I'd need a winter coat heavier than the one I had. Practical dad things. But he was present. Fully, completely present in a way he hadn't been in a while. At one point we sat on a bench outside the main library and he said, "Your grandmother told me something after that Saturday she came over." "Waited," he said. "She told me you didn't say anything to us because you didn't think it would matter. That you didn't think your feelings would register." He paused. "That one stayed with me, Delaware. That one I can't let go." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I said, "It's okay, Dad." He shook his head. "It's not. But I'm going to do better. That's a promise." From Ronald, a promise like that meant something. My mom's process was slower and messier, which honestly tracks with her personality. She's not someone who resolves things cleanly. About 3 weeks after the reception, she came into my room, sat on the edge of my bed, and started talking. She talked for a long time. About pressure she felt with Brianna, who had been struggling with some social anxiety that year that I hadn't fully known about. About how she'd convinced herself I was fine, always fine, and had stopped checking whether that was actually true. About how my capability had somehow become a reason to need me less rather than a reason to show up more. It wasn't an excuse. She wasn't framing it as one. She was just explaining the machinery of how it happened. I asked her, "Did it ever occur to you that being capable doesn't mean I stopped needing you?" She looked at me and said, "That's the thing I got wrong. For a long time." Was it a perfect conversation? Well, did I cry? Embarrassingly, yes. Did she cry? Considerably more than me. Did Brianna walk in at the worst possible moment, read the room completely wrong, and try to offer us both a snack? Yes, she did. And somehow that broke the tension entirely. Here's what I want you to understand about how this story ends. And I mean really ends, not the tidy version. It didn't resolve in one big moment. There was no single conversation that fixed everything, No dramatic scene where my family stood in an auditorium and finally clapped for me. Life doesn't really do that. What happened instead was gradual. My mom started showing up to smaller things, deliberately, visibly. A school presentation in April. A college prep meeting she had no obligation to attend. She sat in the third row and waved at me like I was 5 years old, which was mortifying, and also I loved it completely. My dad framed my scholarship certificate. Just quietly did it one weekend, found a frame, hung it in the hallway where everyone could see it. Didn't make an announcement. I walked past it one morning and just stopped. Grandma Opal called every Sunday after that. Still does. And Brianna, sweet, chaotic, accidentally destructive Brianna, wrote me a card before I left for college. Handwritten, 3 pages, terrible spelling throughout. She said she was sorry for the nail appointment even though it wasn't her idea, and that she was proud of me, and that I better call her from campus or she would personally drive to Columbus and embarrass me in front of my new friends. She would absolutely do it. Have no doubt. I left for Ohio State in late August. My entire family drove me. All 4 of them, plus Grandma Opal in the passenger seat giving my dad directions he didn't need. When they helped me move into my dorm and finally had to leave, my mom hugged me for a long time without saying anything. Then she pulled back and said, "I see you, Delphine." I should have said that more. I see you. I've thought about that sentence more times than I can count. So that's my story. Not perfect. Not fully wrapped up with a bow. But real. If any part of this felt familiar to you, if you've ever been the one who handles things, the one people assume is fine, the one whose moment got overlooked, I just want you to know that being quiet about your pain doesn't mean it isn't valid. And sometimes the people who love you just need to be shown, clearly and honestly, exactly what they're missing. It took a scholarship, an empty auditorium seat, a grandmother in a church coat, and a framed certificate in a hallway. But they got there. If this story meant something to you, I'd really love to hear about it in the comments. And if something didn't sit right with you, tell me that too, honestly. Can take it. If you made it all the way here, thank you. Really. Means more than you know.